Sairam, dear all. The Satya Sai organization, international organization, will hold the 11th World Conference in Prashanti Nilayam in November 2020 in conjunction with 95th birthday celebration of our Lord Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba. The theme of the conference is Unity is Divinity and Purity is Enlightenment. In preparation of this landmark event, SSIO will organize pre-world conferences in all zones. We are launching this webinar from Sydney, Australia to devotees all over Australia, irrespective of their attendance at the pre-world conference. Today, we are fortunate to have Brother Sai Giridhar from Prashanti Nilayam, who was one of the instruments to put this study guide together. We also have Brother Sridhar with me to conduct this webinar. We request all your listeners to participate in the webinar by posting your answers to the questions we raise and have a fruitful discussion of the topic Purity is Enlightenment. Also, please feel free to post any question to clarify anything that crops up in your mind on the topic. Today, first of all, we would like to request Sai Giridhar to explain to us briefly on the matrix they used at Prashanti to formulate this study guide.
Sairam, am I audible to everybody?
Yes.
A very loving Sairam to all my dearest brothers and sisters from Prashanti Nilayam. We are all, I represent my brothers and sisters here, and we send you lots of love. This World Youth Conference, in fact, has an interesting title. Unity is Divinity, Purity is Enlightenment. This is a title which Swami had given way back in the mid-80s when there was a World Conference in Rome. In fact, Swami was, they were hoping that Swami would physically visit that conference as well. But Swami had given a written message through Shri V.K. Narasimhanji, who was then the editor of Sanatan Sarthi, a very close devotee to Swami. He would argue with Swami on many things, and Swami also would have a healthy argument with him. So that's how he was with Swami, Mr. V.K. Narasimhan, and he carried Swami's message with him to Rome, and during the World Conference with this exact title, Unity is Divinity, Purity is Enlightenment, given by Swami himself, he read out the message, and there's a very famous experience that happened there, that he forgot his, his eyeglasses, and he couldn't read without them, and he just prayed to Swami, and out of nowhere, his eyeglasses literally appeared on the podium for him. There's a very famous experience that happened there in that conference as well. So we are all fortunate that in 2020, a very, very unique and auspicious year for all over the world, because we pray that the world over consciousness rises itself in the hearts of every being, bringing lots of harmony, joy, peace and happiness to everybody. This is also said to be a turning point here in the rise of consciousness. But all of these little steps that we take are, this one step which Swami says, he says, you take that one step and I'll take the 100 steps towards you. So these are those little steps that we are taking to please our Lord, so that he confers his blessings not just on us, but on the entire world at large. So this is our good fortune. And we were here in Prashanti Nilayam from the Sri Satya Sai Center for Human Values and the Radio Sai team. We were very fortunate to, work on this study guide for this World Conference and also the pre-conferences. From the Center for Human Values, Brother Amay and myself specifically worked on this document, which is Purity is Enlightenment. And when we were going through the various quotations of Swami that were shared with us by the international chairman, we found that all of this is basically falling into a matrix, a 3x3 matrix, because everything that Swami said under unity, purity, divinity, was under 3 categories. One was at a physical level, that is, take one thing at a time, say purity, right? Purity is something which we can relate to immediately. Purity at a physical level, and purity involved in all physical activities, that is body-based activities, right? Anything, any interaction for that matter that we have in the world, or the corporeal level, right? And then Swami is talking about purity at the mind level or bhava level. And then he talks about purity even at the atmic level, which should raise questions right here, right? But that would be nice to discuss as well. But Swami is basically talking about unity, purity and divinity at 3 levels. That is at the physical level, the corporeal level, the bhava, that is the mind level, and at the atmic level. So all the quotes that Swami basically spoke on this topic were compiled, and what we did was, as you can see in the slide, we gave quotes like say purity at the atmic level would be PA, unity at the atmic level would be UA, unity at the bhava level would be UB, purity at the corporeal or body level would be PC, right? And then there were also intermediate quotes, like quotes that would often overlap 2 concepts, that is, one at a physical level, one at a mental level. In fact, one of the most high frequency code was PBC, that is purity at physical and mental level, in a sense that they were actually cyclic in nature. One would lead to the other. So the code PBC was in fact the most coded or most used code amongst all the codes that you see here. So like that, what we basically did is we coded all of the codes with these codes, and we had what is the central theme of that particular code would be the code 1. What would be sub-theme would be code 2, and if there is a further sub-theme to that, there would be a code 3 as well. So we simply put this onto an Excel sheet and we sorted it according to the requirement, and the international organization said, let's do it top down in our approach. So what we did is we kept atmic level at the highest, and in fact in the document you will see that the highest of the philosophy or the teaching is presented right on top, and it gradually goes down in a very practical way. So in fact in ancient Indian scriptures as well, that is the tradition, that is right up front they give you the highest philosophy, this is it, and then they start expounding on it, right? So somewhere by providence, by Swami's grace, it ended up that way, that we start with the core concept and then we are systematically going ahead. So that's how this matrix came into existence, and it helped us to organize the codes in a way that would help us understand what Swami is saying, and have a flow and structure to what we are studying as well. So that's the genesis of the study guide, the matrix behind the study guide, right? So that's all I would like to say to begin with.
Thank you, Sai.
Any questions?
Sai Ram, Brother Sai Giridhar, this is Sridhar here. I would first like to acknowledge we have devotees from Fiji and New Zealand also here in the webinar. So
wonderful.
Welcome them to this.
A warm welcome to them.
Just to start with the questions, purity as a concept is found in all religions, cultures, and philosophies. What do we understand by the word purity? And for the participants, this is a question to you. And can you please key in your views in the chat box? So again, I repeat the question for the audience. Purity as a concept is found in all religions, cultures, and philosophies. What do we understand by the word purity? So I'll give you a few minutes to write your responses in the chat box. Thank you for the responses. Let me just give some of the answers that has come. There is purity in thought, word, and deed. It stands for truth, godliness, and purity is everything that is our true nature. Then we have been rid of the 6 inner enemies, clearing the mind, body, and soul, pure, complete love, being free from evil and selfish thoughts, unconditional and unattached thought, word, and deed. Again, we have a lot of harmony of thought, word, and action, divinity, which is selflessness, alignment of thought, word, and deed again, selfless love, absence of qualities that stand between our divine self. So we are more or less on the same purity in thought, listening to and acting as directed by the inner voice, absolute absence of blemishes, where we can find our inner divinity. Yep, we have all of these very good answers. So, Brother Sai Giridhar, can you expand on Swami's advice where he says that the most important quality is purity, where he also says in Satya Sai Speaks that everything is polluted today, water and all the 5 elements are polluted as well. As a result, the mind of man is also polluted. How is purity to be achieved? So can you expand on Swami's advice where he says, fill our minds with thoughts of God? Why do we need to manifest purity in everything that we do?
Great. Saira. So to begin, I was having a conversation with my mother last evening regarding this webinar. And I was saying that these are the questions that we are going to take. And I just asked her for her opinion on, what purity really is according to her. And she gave a very, very interesting answer, which I felt was so practical and so easy to understand. She said, see, everything has a natural quality about it, right? Nature has created everything in a particular way. So there is a nature to everything that is. So she said, purity means being 100% true to its nature, right? So anything that is different from its nature gets included in it in some way, then we call it impure. Very simple example is, I'm sure there are many sisters here and many brothers who have bought a lot of gold for their families as well. And this is something that I encountered when I visited gold shops as well. So, in India, currently the gold rates are around 4,000 rupees, Indian rupees a gram, right, of gold. And say I go with 10 grams of gold and go to the shop and say, can you please melt this and give me 40,000, because it's, 10 grams, 4,000 a gram, it's 40,000, simple calculation. And then what, they do all kinds of calculation and come back to you and say that, sorry, we can't give you 40,000 for this, but we can at best give you 33,700, something, right? So then I would inquire and find out why. And they would say, okay, what you're calling as pure gold is actually not pure gold. So there is silver in it, there is some amount of copper and few other metal in trace amounts as well. So gold is not really pure gold. So that's when, in a very practical sense, I understood that even when we say pure, it's not really pure. It's a mix of something or the other. So I found this definition that my mother gave very interesting, that purity means being true to the nature of, of anything and everything as it is. So let's begin with this definition because it's in sync with the entire study guide that we have. So as we saw in the metrics, there are 3 levels, right? So we are talking about purity at the physical level, purity at the mental or the feelings level, and then you have purity at the atmic or consciousness level. So we have to understand what is natural or what is the nature of each of these in order to actually see what purity means at these levels, right? So let's start with something which is most tangible and easy for us to understand, which is the physical body. Okay, so it so happened once in Prashanti Nilayam, in the Prashanti Mandir, Swami was giving darshan and he was, walking in the veranda, and a very senior professor of management who was seated there, he was, looking at Swami and enjoying Swami's beautiful darshan, and he had a bracelet in his hand, a golden bracelet in his hand, and Swami kept looking at the bracelet for a while. So the professor felt that maybe he should show the bracelet, and he just pulled his sleeve up and he showed the bracelet to Swami, and he said, "Swami, you have only given this to me," right? He told Swami that this golden bracelet, you have only given this to me. And Swami's response was immediate and prompt. He said, "Well, what about this body? Who gave this to you?" Right? So this body is a gift of God, and so is the entire nature. And actually, if you see, if you minus the human intelligence that makes us feel that we are absolutely unique in this creation, as a very, very physical entity, the human body is just part of the nature. Just as the trees, the plants, the animals, all of it is nourished by nature, and there is a constant cycle of nourishment, birth, growth, and death that constantly happens in nature, and human body is an absolute part of nature that way, right? And Swami says the nature of human body is to serve. Paropakarartham idam shariram. That is, the human body, the physical body has been given, the human birth has been given for a simple reason, to serve. In fact, Swami uses the Sanskrit quote very often and says, Paropakarartham vahanti nadyaha phalanti vrikshaha, right? Which means it is for the sake of serving others that the rivers flow, that the flowers blossom, the fruits grow on trees. It is for the sake of serving others that cows give milk, right? So that is just an example to show that everything in nature is actually meant to serve everybody. In fact, Swami would go to the extreme to say a sandalwood tree lends its fragrance to the axe that cuts it as well. And at the same time, it is giving shade to the person who is trying to cut it. Which to that extent, nature is wired to serve. It's wired to, coexist with everybody else. And then, of course, there is a balance that is built into nature of birth, of sustenance, and of destruction, right? So this is what is natural to the physical world and the physical body that we see. Service is natural, right? So when we come to the mental level, it's very interesting to know there is a very specific discourse of Swami. Possibly I will provide the reference in the chat in a while. But Swami talks about how the entire creation happened through the combination of the 3 gunas, that is sattva, rajas, and tamas. Those are the 3 energies. So you have the sattvic energy, that is purity, harmony, selflessness, positivity, inclusivity. All that is the energy of sattva. And then you have the energy of rajas, which is passion, which is dynamism, which is in a sense self-centric, self-driven, passion-driven. And then you have the energy of tamas, which is ignorance, indolence, lethargy, a kind of dreariness, all this put together. So there are these are characteristics of these 3 energies of sattva, rajas, and tamas. And Swami talks of how the entire creation happened by the combination of the 5 elements. That is, you have earth, fire, wind, water, and space. and then the three gunas, the 5 elements and the 3 gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas. The combination of these 8 factors led to the entire creation, including the human system, right? In the process, Swami describes that mind, which gains its input predominantly from the 5 senses of perception. You know, mind is nothing but thoughts. Mind is a bundle of thoughts. Thoughts that stay long enough become desires, and hence mind is also called bundle of desires, right? Desires are again thoughts. So how do we get these thoughts? It's our thoughts are generated from food. Jaisa an, vaisa man, Swami would often say, right? The kind of food that we eat determines our mind. But food that we eat is not merely through the mouth, but through all the 5 senses. That is through the eyes, all that we see, all that we hear, all that we smell, all that we eat through the mouth, and everything that we feel through our skin. All of that is food for the mind. Mind is constantly registering that food, and the composite information of all that is taken in, Bhagavan says, over lifetimes is what makes up the mind, right? So what really is the nature of the mind? This combination of the 5 elements, that is Akasha, space, Vayu, air, Agni, fire, Apa, water, and Prithvi, earth. And then you have Sattva, Rajas, Tamas energies, right? So Swami says that these 5 inputs, key input systems to the mind, that is the eyes, ears, nose, are called the Jnanendriyas. Jnanendriyas means organs of perception, right? They were fundamentally made up of the 5 elements plus the Sattva guna, right? Among the 3 gunas, only the Sattva guna. The 5 elements plus Sattva guna resulted in the formation of the 5 sense organs of perception, right? And they are the input device for the mind. Mind receives all the inputs and it retains its structure of thoughts based on the inputs that it gains, right? But the nature of these 5 input device is sattvic in nature, right? So Bhagavan says that if you give any input through these 5 senses of perception that is not sattvic in nature, it is going against its nature, right? So what is purity? Purity is going against the original nature of anything. What is natural to it? You deviate from that, it becomes impure, right? Or if there is a mixture, it becomes impure. So sattvic is the most natural food for these 5 senses. That is sattvic vision, sattvic hearing, sattvic smell, sattvic speech, and sattvic eating. And also, you know, anything to do with touch, sattvic touch, that is touch with good feelings, touch by people who mean good to you, right? Who have good thoughts for you. All that is very important, right? The natural thing for mind is sattvic, right? So anything that deviates from that, pollutes the mind naturally. Then we come to the Atmic level, right? What is the nature of Atma? If I am to say in one sentence, Atma, or also more famously today known as consciousness, consciousness includes all, judges none, right? It's all inclusive and it judges none. You know why? Because in consciousness there is no second. Right? The nature of consciousness or Atma is Advitiyam. That is, there is nothing that is second to it. In fact, once Swami in Kodaikanal was talking about his Himalayan journeys, and he talked about his visit to the Vashishta Gufa in Rishikesh, where he went and gave the very sacred darshan of Jyotir Padmanabha, of Lord Vishnu reclining to a great sage who was living in the cave of Vashishta near the sacred town of Rishikesh. And while talking about these experiences, Swami casually turned towards one of the conveners of the Sai Trust in Tamil Nadu and asked him, "What, Mr. Raman, do you know Purushottamananda?" The sage's name was Swami Purushottamananda. And Swami said, "Do you know Purushottamananda?" And Raman sir said, no, Swami, I don't know who is Purushottamananda. Then he said, do you know Swami Shivananda, the famous Swami Shivananda of Divine Life Society, Rishikesh? And then Mr. Raman said, no, Swami, I don't know who is Swami Shivananda. Then Swami said, okay, and he was about to, possibly list out few others, and Mr. Raman immediately interjected and said, Swami, I don't know anybody, I know only you, Swami. And you know what Swami said? Swami immediately became very, very intense in his posture, and he said, Idi okkati teluskunte chalu, ekoham bahusyam. If you know this one, it is enough. I am this one that seems to be this many. That is, the nature of Atma or consciousness is Swami himself. And that is just one, And Swami says when he walks out, he doesn't see many, he sees himself in everybody. That is the nature of consciousness. So purity means being true to the nature, whatever the nature of that, object or subject be. And understanding how to maintain purity is simple. How do you go back to the natural state? Right? So that's where I would like to stop this answer.
Thank you, Sai Giridhar. Swami says, character does not mean good conduct alone. One should consider the fellow human beings as one's own brothers and sisters. One should develop bhava-siddhi, purity in feelings, which will ultimately lead to jnana-siddhi, attainment of enlightenment. Sai Giridhar, Swami makes clear that without purity of thought, word and deed, we are not truly human. To this triple purity, he adds purity in feelings. Please, can you elaborate on this? Thank you.
Yes. So, which Swami has always emphasized on. And he would say that you're not a human being if you don't have unity of thought, word and deed. Swami would very often give the examples of Rama and Ravana from the epic of Ramayana. And he would often say that, Ravana had many noble thoughts. He wanted to convert all of the ocean into drinking water so that there's enough water available on the planet Earth. But all those thoughts he never put into action. All the bad thoughts that he had, he would rush to, fulfill them. And that is why it led to his decline. But Rama, on the contrary, was a man of his word. And he would say and he would keep up his word. And whatever noble, instantaneously, right? So, the unity and the purity of the thought, word and deed is a unique gift that is given only to humanity. Why? Because if you look at all the other traits that we have, like right from the body, if we analyze and see, many of the features that we have, many other animals also have. In fact, some animals are more sensitive to life than even human beings at times, right? We have seen that how dogs sometimes sacrifice themselves to save their owner. Many other pets do that as well. So we see that, and even in terms of faculty, there are animals that hear better than us. There are animals and birds that see better than us, that smell better than us. So even in terms of the faculties that we have in nature, there are many other species that have more profound capabilities. Then why is human being called the crest jewel of the creation? Jantunam narajanma durlabham. Bhagavan would often quote the Sanskrit verse again and say that ahara nidra bhaya maituneshu samanyametat pashubir naranam, which means ahara, food, nidra, sleep, bhaya, fear, maituneshu, that is procreation. All these four factors are common between animals and human beings. There's absolutely no difference. Then what is adhikam or excess in human being is buddhi, or sometimes also referred to as jnana. That is the ability to discriminate based on wisdom is something that is unique to a human being. Again, as we said, purity is to be true to your nature, and Swami says the nature of a human being is ability to discriminate, right? So there may be a million thoughts that may come to you because of the food that you're having. One thing I would like to appeal to all of you, please, please, please don't judge yourself for the kind of thoughts you get. You know, we used to get all kinds of thoughts sitting in bhajan hall in Swami's presence. And I have asked this question to Swami. Many other students have asked Swami this question. Swami said, Parvale, it's okay. You know why? Because Jaisa Anna Vaisa Man. Means many times we are negligent to see what kind of food that we are partaking, what kind of company that we are keeping, right? What kind of thoughts that we are entertaining, right? So whatever be the kind of thoughts come to you, please don't judge. Just understand that whatever food you have, that is what is getting converted. The grossest part of the food, you know, becomes the waste, the excreta, right? Then there is the nutrient, which are the subtler part of the food, which assimilates into the body, right? And the subtlest part of the food, which is the vibrations in the food, is what becomes the mind. And hence, if we take food from somebody who has different feelings or you know, different aura about them, or the way they lead their life, with no judgment about it, it's just a simple practical thing that their energy gets associated with the food. And the food, when partaken without purification, results in thoughts, right? So you get many, many different kinds of thoughts because of the food, not just what we eat, but what we see, what we hear, the kind of people we engage in touching, right? All of this, and even smell. In fact, I remember Swami telling us in a discourse that when you go out onto the street, you know, have your handkerchief on your nose. Don't allow the smoke and other things. One, of course, is the health reason. The other is the pollutants also trigger different kinds of thoughts in us, right? So he would often say, you know, close the mouth and the nose with handkerchief if you don't have a mask. That is right. So thoughts, they come to you, but what is natural to a human being is the ability to discriminate and say, this thought is what will lead to harmony. This thought is what will lead to a larger sense of good, larger sense of well-being, not only for me, but for everybody. And hence I choose this thought, right? So that is where the purity of selection of thought comes into being. And executing that and holding on to that is what is called unity of thought, word and deed. The word, that is the spoken word, and deed, that is action that happens through the body, are both results of our volition, our will, associated with the thought, right? Will plus decision to act is volition, right? Our will comes from our Atmic energy, right? The ability to decide on something and stand by our ground is our inner strength, our strength from our conscience. It is the Atmic energy, is the will that we have, right? But that will plus decision is volition, decision to act. Now, the will has to be in alignment with the decision. In fact, there are a few questions that are coming slightly ahead. I think the next question or so, where we can discuss this further. But it's important now to understand that as a human being, purity means being true to your nature, and your nature is the ability to discriminate what is right and then choose to act. So you choose from the thoughts that you have, right?
Sairam, thank you, Brother Sai Giridhar. Actually leads us to nicely to the next question that we thought we would discuss is, Swami described us as the embodiments of divine Atma, which is unsullied and pure. At the same time, he is also advising us to cultivate purity. How do we reconcile these two statements?
Very nice. So before we reconcile this, there's a very funny episode that I remember regarding the purity of thought and word and deed, which leads on to this question as well. So there was a student who was seated in Bhajan Hall in Prashantinilayam, and bad thoughts, and he was a young guy, his hormones were kicking, whatever, right? So he had so many thoughts that are coming in his mind. And Swami was walking by, and Swami looked at him and said, "Hey, bad thoughts, bad thoughts." And you know what the student said? "Swami, anta passing cloud, Swami, anta passing cloud." He told Swami that these bad thoughts are just passing clouds, right? And then Swami was shocked. He didn't expect this response from the student. So he said, "Hey, adi nen cheppal ra," he said, which means, "Hey, this is what I should say, not you," right? These kind of thoughts are passing clouds is something which I should say, not you. So that is what Swami was saying in a lighter vein. But coming back to this point, Atma is absolute purity. You know, we chant Vedam all the time in Prashantanilayam, in our samitis, in our homes. And the Vedas very clearly say Nishkalo, Niranjano, Nirvikalpo, Nirakhyata, Shuddha Deva Eko Narayana, which means that consciousness or Atma is Nishkalo, it's blemishless, it's unsullied. They use multiple words to say the same thing, that it's absolute purity, right? So when we are Atma ourselves, then what is the need to cultivate purity, right? Now the point is, there was, again, I would take refuge in another experience of a student where, he was in this deep thought that I am God, Aham Brahmasmi, I am God, I am God, I am God. And he went to Swami, and Swami said, "Who are you?" He said, "Swami, I am God." He said, "Oh, very nice. So then go and give darshan today. I am not going to give darshan." So that boy got so shaken up that he silently sat down. And Swami said, "Why? If you are so confident that you are God, go and give darshan. What is wrong? Instead of me, you go and give, because I am God. You are also God." So then Swami said, "These are not things to be spoken simply in words. You should have this conviction, direct experience." Very important. Another beautiful analogy which Swami gives is, when we say we are hungry, right? Food is the solution to the hunger. Is there any conflict in this opinion? Food is a solution to the problem which is called hunger, right? Is there a conflict in this? No, right? So suppose we prepare a plate full of food. When you are hungry, place it in front of you and say, "Oh, food is the solution to this hunger. Food is a solution to this hunger." Will the hunger be satiated? The hunger will only be satiated when the food is actually consumed, digested, assimilated, and you experience a sense of relief, right, at the end of consumption of the food. In the same way, merely saying that I am Atma, or I am Brahma, or I am God, and to say that God is verily purity itself, then why should I be pure? We should be pure because we are not living in the absolute awareness of who we really are. And that is the reason why Bhagavan says it's very important that we develop purity, because this very purity is intended for us to know that we are already pure. We are not sinners. We are not people with dirt. No, that is all ripples that happens in the ocean. The depth of the ocean is absolutely placid, calm, and beautiful. Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram is what it is, right? Just to conclude this answer with an analogy, which is again going to be useful for the coming questions, is when you take your mind as a lake, right? A placid, like Manasarovar. I'm sure many of you would have heard of Kailash Manasarovar. If there's an equivalent in Australia, you can please type it in the chat box. Basically Manasarovar is a crystal clear lake which is absolutely still, right? So you can see what is at the base of the lake, right? So Bhagavan says our mind is like that. When he gave it to us, like as children, you see the child, very, very pure by nature, right? That's how the mind is when God gifted it to us. But what happens over time is we throw so much of garbage into it that it becomes murky and dirty, right? And then when it's dirty, there are insects that, crop up there. They're hopping from one place to another. Various kinds of things, many events happening inside the water now. So there are ripples now that are formed on the water. So the murkiness of the water and the ripples that are formed on the water prevent us from seeing what is at the core of all of this. What is at the base of the lake is not visible to us because one, it is dirty and hence it's not clear. Second, there are ripples, right? So Bhagavan says our mind, though is like Manasarovar, we add a lot of garbage into it and make it like that. So once we clean it up and free it from, it's not enough if we just clean it, but the ripples also have to be silenced. And such a silent mind is a natural reflection of the Atma, which is purity by itself. The very definition of purity is Atma. Why? Atma means there is no second to it. There is nothing other than it that can pollute it, right? We define purity as being absolutely 100% to its nature and no second substance added to it, right? Atma by definition itself means there is no second to it. So nothing can contaminate the Atma. So that's the answer for this.
Thank you, Brother Sai Giridhar. That was a very good explanation. Thank you. I now request the audience, if you have any questions, you can use the chat box to ask your questions. And while we're doing that, we already have a couple of questions in the chat box. So, Brother Sai Giridhar, would you be able to take those two questions that you see on the chat box now, while the audience is getting the other questions up there for you to answer?
Sure.
So if you want, I'll read out the two questions which are there now. What role are past birth tendencies play in purity of our mind in view of this discussion? And the second question we have there is, why is Swami advising to see and hear only good? As human beings, isn't our duty to observe and try our best to minimize bad things happening?
Okay. So this is, I think both the questions are very, very good and very important to this conversation that we are having. What role our past birth tendencies play in purity of our mind in view of this discussion? Well, they have a very, very important role to play. Which role? So we are looking at the entirety of the subject that we're dealing with at three levels, right? One is at a physical and action and in the world level. The other is the mind and the feelings and bhava level and the atmic level, right? So what happens is the mind has got 5 components, as Swami would tell us, and the ancient rishis have also revealed the same. That is, it is called manas. That is the aspect of the mind that has thoughts randomly appearing and disappearing, right? That aspect, that functionality of mind. Okay, so as I'm describing this, please note that there are no partitions in mind. Mind is nothing but thoughts, right? Depending on what is the functionality of the thought, you give one name to it. So when the functionality is random thoughts appearing and disappearing, and there are thoughts and counter thoughts, it's called manas. So then we have thoughts that are decision-making thoughts, right? Like we discussed, we have the power to discriminate and take a decision. So the decision-making thought is called buddhi, right? Then we have the thought, once we decide, for example, you want an ice cream, you see, an amazing flavor that has newly come up in the market right in front of your eyes. So there is a desire that comes up. So you take a decision whether to have it or not. Moment you decide that you want it, you see what happens very, very practically. There are no thoughts immediately after. The body simply moves in the direction of where that is, the ice cream is, and you just go and procure it and start enjoying the ice cream. So the mind, when it gets associated with the body, having taken the decision to act, is called ahankara or ego, right? So buddhi, the decision-making functionality of mind, is the intellect. Ahankara is the ego, and the mind with thoughts and counter thoughts is called manas, or literally just the mind. And the fourth aspect is what you're asking, which is called chitta. Chitta means it is like the memory storage hard disk which is there in the mind. So what chitta does is it registers, it imprints in itself every experience, thought, word and deed that I think is happening to me or I feel I have done, right? Across lifetimes, every thought, word and deed that I think is happening to me or I think I am doing is imprinted in the chitta. This is the secret that not everything is registered in the chitta. Only those things that I think I have experienced or I think it's happening to me or I have seen it. The I there is very, very important. Okay, that is what kind of is the password for it to get entry into the folder called chitta. And once that happens across lifetimes, the thoughts that we get, in fact, many times you may be wondering that I'm having a very good sattvic life or so-called sattvic life, but the thoughts that I get are not commensurate to the food that I eat. Why is that, right? So it so happens that the food that we eat, again, we are not conscious that the food is happening through air, through water, through what we see, what we hear, and all of it, through touch. So what it does is, when a particular thought of a particular nature, it could be sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic, it triggers those tendencies which are already there as imprints in us. So we get thoughts that are then commensurate to those tendencies, right? Then we start wondering, I didn't do anything wrong, why am I getting this thought? But the fact is, those tendencies are somewhere there within us and they are triggered by, again, food. But our argument would be, I consciously didn't have food that would trigger this sometimes. But the challenge there is, the food here is of the nature of air, water, solids, touch, all of this, right? Visual as well. So the past impressions play a very important role. So Swami gives, I think what is more important in answering this question is to understand how to handle this situation, right? Moderator, can I just go into it for a minute? Saira?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, thank you. So Swami gives a 4-step strategy. You can note this down. He says, by which you can also control the food that you're taking in and also take care of the tendencies that are playing from your past birth and other things, right? So he says, first, Tyaja Durjana Samsargam, avoid bad company. Okay, bad company means food that is not compatible as well. That is not sattvic in nature, right? Tyaja Durjana Samsargam. Second, Bhaja Sadhu Samagamam. So it's not enough only to avoid, you have to flush, because the nature of mind is it's constantly seeking input. You cannot silence the mind permanently. In fact, there's nobody who has silenced their mind permanently. Either the mind itself dissolves, which is called the state of amanaska, in the state of deep samadhi. But in all other cases, the mind is functional, which means the mind always seeks input, right? So if you're going to stop input and filter the input, what you're going to do is filter out all the bad input that creates restlessness in mind. Okay. Another definition of purity is peace, shanti, right? So if there are many youngsters here, I had this challenge while I take class at the university. And when I tell the students that in your life you want peace, and they go blank because they don't understand what peace is. Because in their life they want exuberance, they want vibrancy. They really are not asking for peace. So then it took some time for me to understand that and articulate it differently. And I tell them, okay, so how many of you don't want to be in a state of restlessness or discomfort or in a state of disturbed mind? Then they say, yes, we all want that, right? So basically that is peace, right? But they don't recognize peace as peace, because I think you need to have enough life experience to know the value of peace in your life, right? Anything that keeps your mind at rest, at peace, is a good food, a good input for you, a simple marker for this, so to speak. So Tyaja Durjanasan, avoid bad company. Bhaja Sadhu Samagamam, be in the company of good. You need to give food to the mind, right? So give good food to the mind. Bhaja Sadhu Samagamam, Kuru Punyam Ahoratram. Now the thing is, Rajasic and Tamasic tendencies are not bad. There are inherent tendencies in the human system, right? So, but you have to ensure that you constantly drive those energies out of the system and keep the sattvic energies at a high, right? So why? Because sattvic energies means a still mind, a stable mind, and a focused mind. Now imagine you have a still mind, a stable, calm, peaceful mind, and a focused mind. What magic you can do with your relationships, with your work, to achieve success in every field, whether it's in the world or in the spiritual sadhana, right? You need a still mind, a beautiful, blessed, calm, peaceful mind, and a focused mind. That's what you need. It's called ekagrata, right? I'll come to what that is a little later. But basically, Kuru Punya Mahoratra means from morning to night, engage in meritorious deeds, that is in service to humanity, in service to animal, in service to nature. So when we engage in service to nature, it automatically purifies our system of the Rajasic and Tamasic tendencies. So we are giving good input, not allowing bad input to come into our system, and through service activities, we are cleansing the existing Rajoguna and Tamoguna and all the dirt that is there out of the system, right? Then the fourth, which is important, which Swami says, is Smara Nitya Anityatam, which means constantly discriminate whether what you're dealing with is going to give you only temporary benefit or long-term benefit. Shreyas, which is long-term benefit, Prayas, which is temporary benefit. So Swami always says that discriminate and choose the long-term benefit always over, something which is temporary and gives you pleasure, but later would lead to pain, right? So this, in summary, is what Swami advises us to do.
Thank you, Brother Sai Giridhar. Just on the second question, if you can just cover that in about 2 minutes, we are running short of time.
Yes.
If you can just, on the second question that I raised, if you can just sort of cover that in 2 minutes, on why is Swami advising, only to see and hear good? Is it not our duty to observe and try our best to minimize the bad things happening? Can you cover that in 2 minutes? We have other questions as well.
Yes, it's very, very simple. Let's do this. So when Swami says, see good, hear good, it's not just to see good things as it is. Like say, you go to temple or you see auspicious things. It also means see good in whatever is there, right? So you have a person coming up to you, they have many traits. Can you develop an ability to see good in them? Associated the goodness in everything that is there. Because everything has goodness in it, right? So first thing is that see good doesn't translate as see only good, as in what you say, then everybody will land up only in the temples and the churches and the mosques because there's just goodness there. And that would be the definition, right? But Swami is saying, don't judge anybody. Look at the goodness in everything that is there. And then see, everything has inherent goodness. There is a story which Swami would often say. It's a little bit funny story, and Swami would laugh really loud when he would tell the story. So once Narada, the great sage, who would always cause troubles in the lives of people, of course, with the intention to take them closer to God. He was walking on earth. He's known to travel all the worlds, and he was walking on earth. And he saw a piece of excreta on the ground. And he looked at it with, repulsion and just walked the other way. And suddenly he heard somebody calling, and it was, so Swami narrates the story. He says the excreta actually calls out to Narada and says, hey you, why are you walking away from me like that? I am the one who is disgusted with you. So Narada says, how dare you say that? Then the excreta explains and says, you know what? I was a beautiful mango until I had a journey through you. And in my association with you, this beautiful mango, the juicy mango that I was, landed up to be like this. In fact, it is your association that has made me like this. But even otherwise, you know what? I become manure, I enrich the soil, plants grow and trees grow from here. And I have a role to play in this creation is what that piece of excreta was telling Narada. So Swami often tells this story and he bursts into pearls of laughter as he's telling this. But the point being, there is utility in nature for everything, there is goodness for everything. So when Swami said, see good, hear good, he also means to develop an ability to see good in everything, right? That is one thing, one aspect. The other aspect is, of course, in terms of our association, we must associate with satsang. In terms of food, it is sattvic food, right? What happens by this is, our mind gains so much strength. Why? Because the mind, by its very nature, the way it has been created by God, by the creation, is sattvic, right? We discussed how all the 5 sense organs of input were born out of sattva guna plus the 5 elements, right? So what is natural to it and keep it at ease is sattvic or good.
Sai Ram, Sai Giridhar, thank you very much for your time and for your in-depth explanations of all those verses mentioned by Swami and the Q&A. There are plenty of other questions. We will see how we can compile and send to you and get some answers and get it back to the people who put through the questions. And loving Sai Ram to you all. Have a great day.
Sai Ram.